Yeah, I think John Simpson's an interesting player because he didn't really get I should use this lightly. He did have the opportunity to play, but I feel like with Simpson, it wasn't how how the Raiders utilized him wasn't correct in my opinion. First and foremost, they should have started him and let him play every single week at one position and let him train there and just go forward with him as the starter because John Simpson's a starting caliber guard in the NFL, right? And talk a little bit about development. There's no position that develops more than offensive line with experience, right? Guys could be very average players in college. Maybe they're average tackles in college. They come into the NFL, they translate or transition over into like guard or center or whatever, and they'll be much better come year 5 than they are in year 1. And I think John Simpson's kind of one of those guys. He obviously didn't work out with the Raiders, but the big difference is he was drafted under the John Gruden, Mike Mayock regime. And this new regime, which was the Josh McDaniels, Dave Ziegler regime, obviously didn't want to keep him around, right? Simpson did start for the Raiders coming in, and they ended up swapping him out with Dylan Parham, as well as the other guard position is not 100% set yet, but John Simpson was starting for the Raiders, right? And I do think that he was getting better and better and better, right, as the seasons kind of went along. But I wouldn't, I would be lying if I didn't tell you guys that I wasn't the biggest John Simpson fan coming out of college. Right? I was not the biggest fan, but he did definitely do some things that impressed. He's strong as hell, physical as hell. And it's interesting because, when you look at John Gruden, they ran a heavy zone scheme, right? Zone blocking specifically, inside zone, outside zone. And Josh McDaniels runs a heavy power scheme. And I would assume that John Simpson would fit that power scheme a little bit better, but he really struggled in the power scheme, right? So I think John Simpson may have more success in a more zone heavy scheme. And I believe the Ravens, at least last year, they weren't heavy one way or the other. I'm pretty sure they were pretty inside zones, outside zones, power runs, dual man, all that stuff. I'm pretty sure they were pretty consistent across the board, right? I don't think they were like super heavy one way or the other. But with Gruden, it was like super far left to the zone, and then with Daniels, it's super far right with power, right? Like you couldn't have two guys that were more different, right? And I think John Simpson just didn't fit the scheme, but I do think he's going to be a good football player. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up starting at left guard for the Ravens.
You also mentioned development a couple of times here. The Ravens have an excellent offensive line coach in Joe D. De Los Angeles, you're talking about Matt Skura's, Bradley Bozeman's, all up and down our line. Rick Wagner is, Simpson's strong, big, strong guy. Is it more about his technique? Like, is that what led to the inconsistencies? I know you said he got moved around a lot, but is it just like more technique stuff that he's got to clean up? Or is it just maybe he doesn't have the athletic ability to keep up with some of these defensive linemen?
Yeah, the thing that I've noticed with Simpson is it's more of the mental processing with him, right? And I'll give you an example. I can't remember when it was. It was 2 seasons ago. He was starting at the left guard position, and these defensive linemen are running these games, right? They're running stunts, and John Simpson was struggling to process that part of it, right? So you can say it's maybe athletic as well as being able to process it. Teams would also delay blitz on his side, and he wouldn't be able to kind of pick that up in time. So for me, I think with John Simpson, the big thing is the mental processing part of it. And us fans, sometimes we don't think about it, right? That the mental aspect of it is a big thing because the speed of the game is faster from college into the NFL. Every person is stronger and bigger. But then the coaches are smarter too, right? If John Simpson makes one mistake, right, he can't pick up a defensive line game, a delayed blitz, he doesn't see it. The next week, the same coach is going to come out and do that same exact thing, right? And that was kind of what was happening with Simpson. I remember like back to back, maybe it was 3 weeks back to back, they would delay blitz on him, and he wouldn't be able to pick it up. Now, he obviously picked it up a couple times, but he did struggle at times too, right? Leading to like sacks and quarterback hits. I think there was one game specifically where he ended up losing the game for the Raiders because he didn't pick a guy up on like 3rd down. We ended up punting, never got the ball back, right? So I think with John Simpson, a lot of it is mental. And the positive thing with the mental part of it is every person gets better from a mental standpoint in the NFL. 100% of people get better. So that is what I would have hope with John Simpson, right? Is that he kind of continues to improve.
Yeah, the Ravens have a type, and they want a big body next to our guy Linderbaum.
Right.
Obviously a little bit undersized, but the left guard spot. I mean, Scout. You're just playing between Linderbaum and Ronnie Stanley.
No.
You have help. You
Yeah.
have a lot of intelligence between those
Yeah.
two. So this battle should be really interesting to see. I'm a little bit surprised, first of all, that Ben Cleveland isn't in the mix, because when
Right.
he's played, there's been splashes of greatness
Right.
mixed in with splashes of what the heck is he doing. You would figure, like you said, the mental game would get better with Ben Cleveland. A lot of fans here in Baltimore point to John Harbaugh's doghouse and say Cleveland might be in the doghouse, and so on and so forth. Whether there's merit to that, I don't know.
Right.
But it does seem to roll that way, if I had to be completely honest with you. So, a big body next to Linderbaum, and who's somebody who's going to be helped out with Ronnie Stanley. But this preseason is going to be really interesting to
Right.
watch. Big,
Oh yeah.
solid John Simpson battling it out, because both of them are going to have a chance to earn their spot